Here on this program, we show you this chart illustrating private sector job growth under President Bush and under President Obama. We show it to you all the time because those numbers aren't going to change. They don't lie. These are absolutes. This is what has happened. Now it's made its way into the latest campaign ad for President Obama. Part of the reason for that is the recovery of the automobile industry. President Obama saved the big three, yet Mitt Romney says he'll take credit for it. So what does the president think of that?
Mitt Romney just recently said that he deserves the credit for the revival of the U.S. auto industry. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think this is one of his etch-a-sketch moments. I don't think anybody takes that seriously. People remember his position, which was, let's let Detroit go bankrupt. So had we followed his advice at that time, GM and Chrysler would have gone under, and we would have lost probably 1 million jobs throughout the Midwest.
Romney was pressed further about his auto industry remarks on Fox News. Take a look.
Former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm said that you knifed us in the back for taking the auto rescue credit. What were you really saying there? Because my memory serves me, you were dead set against that rescue.
No, here was what I said, and it's written down in an op-ed where you can take a good look at it.
It sure is. And the title of the op-ed, Let Detroit Go Bankrupt, Romney attempted to back up his claim.
And I wrote an op-ed. This was back when George Bush was president. And I said, don't write them a check. They need to go through a managed bankruptcy. The head of the UAW, he said that's absolutely wrong. These companies can't go through bankruptcy. It would never work. But you know what? That's finally what happened. The president finally came around, and they went through a managed bankruptcy, and now they're back on their feet.
Yeah, but they went through a managed bankruptcy with a lot of taxpayer dollars. That's where were you trying to draw the distinction there? Because Mark Zandi of Moody's said without all those taxpayer dollars backing up the bailout, the bankruptcy filing that was pretty much, as you said, the case, would have never been possible. In other words, a bankruptcy filing alone, these guys still would have been in deep doo-doo. Do you agree with that?
Well, what I said at the time was, in that op-ed, I said as they go into bankruptcy, if government support is needed, if the government, for instance, has to provide guarantees, then that's something I would be open to.
That is just the point. There were no guarantees. There was no liquid money floating around to help millions of Americans. Mitt Romney doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. And you know what? This story isn't going to go away because there's going to be a lot of cars and trucks sold between now and Election Day. And the numbers will keep adding up. Joining me tonight is Eugene Robinson, MSNBC political analyst and associate editor and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Washington Post. Eugene, why doesn't Mitt Romney just surrender on this story? It's like he keeps talking, it gets worse. How does he handle it?
Well, not this way. He cannot win this because he wrote it down. He wrote down, let's give him credit. Let's say he didn't write the headline, Let Detroit Go Bankrupt. But read the op-ed. He says, don't invest government money in the auto industry. Let it go bankrupt. And to talk about guarantees, he's implying guarantees of backing loans that some private capital would provide. There was no private capital to lend to the auto industry. So GM would have gone under, Chrysler would have gone under, and because of the disruption to the supply chain, Ford, which was doing pretty well, probably would have gone under too. That's the fact. And anything else is just incoherent.
Well, this story, I think, is going to keep going because there's going to be car sales and benchmarks every month, truck sales every month, and every time a positive number comes out, it's going to be resurrected by the media. I know I am. And Romney is on the wrong side of history here. So how much is this going to hurt him in the campaign?
Well, I think it's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt him more if he keeps trying to insist that black is white and that things didn't happen the way everyone knows they did happen. You know, I always thought that Romney would have some difficulty switching from his campaign rhetoric to primary campaign rhetoric to general election rhetoric. Now that's not brain surgery. I mean, George W. Bush did it okay, so it can be done. But I'm surprised at really the level of, and I said it before, incoherence that we're seeing in some of these attempts to position himself for a general election. This stuff doesn't make sense, and it's going to hurt him.
We are seeing some of the best debate material being put in front of us. I mean, when these two guys get together and debate and this subject comes up, I would imagine Romney's probably going to have another version. But he took credit for it. But then when he campaigned earlier this week in Michigan, he didn't say a word about that, which is kind of an admission of a mistake. Or are you reading it differently?
Yeah, I don't read it differently, Ed, and I do think that at some point he's going to have to say, I opposed the bailout of the auto industry, but the president did it, and it worked out fine, and I was wrong. He did the right thing. I congratulate him. But this trying to have it both ways on a black and white issue in which he's written it down is never going to work.
What he is admitting to is a story in the Washington Post about him bullying a perceived to be gay student at his school, and actually, as the story read, leading a posse down the hall to go give this kid a haircut. Now, Romney is saying that this happened 48 years ago. But if you look at his positions, he was intolerant then. He was intolerant in his actions then. He's intolerant in his political positions today. What do you make of it?
I found it a fascinating story. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I think of it. Frankly, I think we are responsible for our actions, even if they took place long ago. And you take that into consideration. He was a kid. He obviously didn't know as much about the world as he knows now. And he's not necessarily a bully now. But imagine if it emerged that say President Obama had done such a thing when he was a teenager. And I'm just imagining how that would get played.
Well, they would have probably reported him to be a gang leader.
Of course.
I mean, he would have paid a severe price for that. Eugene Robinson, great to have you with us tonight. Thanks so much.